PR Connections Radio presents.
I guess you can be very successful without one, and probably some people do. But I would not have accomplished anywhere near what I have accomplished without a mentor. I have had a number of mentors, and my whole life has changed dramatically. I went from going nowhere to having a business that operates all over the world. If you want to win in a big way, you want to get a mentor. It's almost like getting a direct pipeline from their mind to your mind, where you're gaining all their wisdom, all their experience, and all the studying that they've done over a number of years. And like that, you get it all in a short period of time. Are mentors important? Well, I'm going to tell you, mentors literally changed the course of my life. Let's take a look at what thinking into results is and what it could do for you, how it came about. You see, my life had changed dramatically. I went from earning nothing to earning over $1 million a year. And I was sitting one day and I was thinking, how did all this happen? Do you know, I was reading Think and Grow Rich. I was studying Earl Nightingale's material. But a lot of people have read those books and studied Earl's material. And they weren't accomplishing what I was accomplishing. So I had to ask myself, what am I doing so different? You see, I had been raised to believe if you're going to earn a lot of money, you've got to be really smart. I was earning over $1 million a year, and I didn't think I was that bright. I was also raised to believe if you don't go to school, you can't win. Well, I hadn't gone to school. I went to high school for about 2 months. I didn't have a good job. I owned the entire company. If you want to be happy, healthy, and prosperous, it's all here. Thinking into results is going to show you how to get it. If what I've said really triggered something in your mind and you're thinking maybe, contact the certified PGI consultant, hit the button, leave the information, do yourself a favor, sit down and talk to them about what this program can do for you. This very well could be the decision that will change the rest of your life.
Thank you, Bob. This is Sid Maestri. I'm a certified consultant for thinking the results. And today, we're talking about the infinite mind. And what we want to change, what we want to teach you is how to change your non-productive activities into productive activities. And we're talking about your paradigm, a collection of habitual habits, and how to execute this plan. And today, my guest, John Gage, is a student of Thinking and Results. He's a trained voice actor and an all-around good guy. I've known John for a number of years, 6 or 7 or 8 years, and it goes fast when you're having fun. I think John's going to come on here in a minute or two. There he is. Welcome, John. How are you? How are you today?
I'm good. Just a little chilly. Not used to that here in Florida.
Yes.
I think our high today was like 32, which is unusual for Florida. I have friends that actually got 10 inches of snow here in Florida. So,
oh wow,
yeah, it's I think it's funny. It's it's just not normal. So, but other than that, I'm doing fantastic. Yourself?
Well, I'm doing the podcast. Right. John Gage, I'm doing great. And we want to talk about this Thinking in the Results program. And it's real simple. Change your thinking, change your results. If you want something you've never had before, you're going to have to do something you've never done before. Well, that's the fly in the ointment. How do you change your thinking? And that's what Thinking in the Results is about, changing your thinking and change your paradigm. John, you'll have to say a few words about the paradigm.
Well, the one thing about a paradigm is you said it earlier that it's a multitude of habits that influence your behavior. It's not just one habit that influences your behavior. One habit may have a bigger impact on your behavior than, say, another, but it's still a multitude of habits that make you think and act a certain way. And a lot of it has to do with environment. Some of it has to do with genetics. I know in this lesson, Bob talks a little bit about environment and how that affects some of the things that we do. He also talks about how to change those habits, because a multitude of habits is overwhelming to try to change. If you try to do a multitude of things, you end up getting overwhelmed and you don't do anything.
Exactly. What does Bob recommend?
He recommends changing one or two at a time, which is good. That's why you only hear me talk about two things I'm changing, because I don't want it to be overwhelming. And in the past, that's how I've learned to do things. It's like, and we were talking before the show about, I have a heart condition, just something I don't normally mention on here, but I think it's pertinent to the situation, because it's about the ejection fraction, and that's, your heart. A heart goes boom boom, right? It's usually the second beat that ejects the blood through your system. When I was living in Las Vegas, no offense, I know you live there and you're a great guy, but my ejection fraction was only 40%, which was 15% below normal for my age. And since I've changed my lifestyle and changed the way I think and and started changing a lot of these habits, my ejection fraction has gone from 40% to 65%, which is literally 10% above the average for my age, all because I've changed all these little habits one at a time.
John, you were talking about this before we came on the air, and I've never heard of that expression. And what is it again?
The ejection fraction.
Okay, the exact.
It ejects. Think of it as like a.
I got it now.
That ejects water.
Yep.
Only that it ejects blood.
I've got it now. The ejection. And seeing that, my visual is we're looking at heartbeats pumping the blood, and no one ever told me that. Well, we got two things going on, and it's the strength of the ejection.
Until you have the condition, it's not something you think about. But at 40%, your heart's pretty weak, and because I've chosen to change habits and chosen to be a better person and do better things, it's made a big difference in how that functions. So it not only affects you mentally, it affects you physically.
John, can you share a few habits, non-productive habits or activities that you're doing? Let's say the polar opposite.
I know
that a lot
of people are gonna say something about this, but a non-productive habit I used to have, I would argue with people about politics online all the time. Talk about a non-productive habit. You don't change anybody's mind. You can be as impassioned as possible about what you think or believe about certain things, but the person on the other end is the same way. They're not changing your mind and you're not changing theirs. And it becomes a very frustrating thing. So you start getting frustrated and you start getting anxiety and you start, because it's like, oh, you get really, it was non-productive. It didn't do me any good. It didn't have anything to do with my quality of life. It didn't have anything to do with the quality of life of other people. And it sure wasn't part of the teachings of TIR, where you're trying to make, every time you have an encounter with somebody, you want to leave them with the impression of improvement, increase. That's it. It wasn't doing that. All it was doing was frustrating them and me. It wasn't fair to either one of us. So it was something, that was a habit I had to change. And I used it because it was a very predominant habit in my life. And it was causing a lot of internal turmoil that I didn't need and didn't belong there.
How did you replace it? What?
I decided that I wanted to be the opposite of that. I decided I wanted to be, because TIR teaches increase. Well, if I'm going to increase my life and somebody else's life, I can't be the person that's frustrating other people and being frustrated at the same time. I have to be the person that's calm, collective, thoughtful. And so I started writing things down. When I would get frustrated, I'd write things down to get it out and air it out and go, well, that's just silly. Why am I upset over that? And then I started asking myself, well, is this going to matter in 5 years? Well, no. Then why am I upset about it? And then I started asking myself that before I would react. Because reaction and response are two different things. A reaction is an emotional reaction to a circumstance, and a response is a calm, logical, thoughtful reaction to a situation. So I started going, okay, what's it going to take to respond rather than to react? Because a response is a much more kind thing for yourself, but ultimately it's the kind thing to do for the other person. Because you have to remember they're who they are for a reason. You just don't know what that is yet. And you're never going to find it out if you're going to make them mad. So.
You reminded me of a couple things. And I'm not sure I've shared this with you, but I came across this a few years ago. And it was, whenever you disagree with someone, if you'll pause for a moment and consider, if you had all the life experiences that they've had, you might feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And just to think like that, to have that thought, to carry it with you, can reduce a lot of conflicts in your life. But the second thing, when you talk about writing it down, one of the things that we do and that Bob teaches is to write affirmations, positive affirmations. And they always start with, I'm so happy and grateful now that. And what we're doing with that is the thought or the event, let's say the thinking or the act or the behavior that's in a negative. You're thinking about, you're doing it and you know it's negative and you want to stop it, and you write a positive affirmation with the polar opposite of what's going on. We call it the polar opposite because we live in a world of polarity, up and down, black and white, hot and cold, positive, negative. And just studying, working with us with thinking and results, and we use repetition. That's it. I would say repetition's at the heart of changing your paradigm, changing your thinking, is something that you're repeating every day. And that's when Bob mentioned on his video, he's been reading Think and Grow Rich for over 50 years. I've been studying thinking and results for 7 or 8 years, and I'm doing something with it, watching the videos, reading things related to this teaching, as well as watching Bob on YouTube. You had Bob Proctor. You're going to have a wealth of information, videos that had filmed, he'd recorded over the last 20 or so years.
Right. And the one thing he does stress, though, only one or two at a time, because you're going to overwhelm yourself. I used to think I could change everything at once. You can't do that. You don't get to your destination immediately. You have to go 1 mile at a time. Okay, I've got my first mile. I've got my second mile. Well, okay, there's 180 of those that we have to obtain now to get to that destination, or whatever the number is. You don't get to it right away, but you do eventually get to it because you're doing it one step at a time. Christmas time has just passed, but one of my favorite shows is Santa Claus is Coming to Town by Rankin Bass. It's got Fred Astaire in it, and one of the songs in it is "Put One Foot in Front of the Other," and that's when the wizard is going from evil to good, and he doesn't know how to do that. And Kris Kringle says, "Put one foot in front of the other, and eventually you'll be walking across the floor. The next thing you'll know, you'll be walking out the door." It was an enlightening moment. Literally this year, it dawned on me that's what I'm doing here.
John, before we came on, we had a few thoughts about journaling. About journaling and the value. Let's say, leaving the stress during the day.
Yeah. One of the things that I do is, if I get frustrated, I'll write it down. I'll write all my frustration out, just all of it. Just write it out, and then I'll just toss it away. And it's a symbolism for just getting rid of it, but it allows me to just, okay, it's done, it's out, I'm over it, I don't have to worry about it. It allows me to stay positive. And and if I'm going to send something to somebody, I literally write it out first in a journal or, on a piece of paper. I at least write it down first and then go, okay, what message do I want to get across that's not only going to get my message across, but also not insult and be rude to the other person. And I do that a lot. I find myself rewriting things 7, 8, 9 times before I send them. But the finished product is very kind, very, it gets my point across, gets my question answered. And just like I also write down, daily my affirmations so that, and that's a good thing too, because not only am I writing them, I'm saying them, and I'm seeing them being written down. So it's my subconscious is absorbing it quicker. If you have, we talked about all those little antennas last week, and that's one of the ways to utilize those antennas as efficiently as possible.
In case somebody missed last week's, can you say a few words about the antennas?
Oh, well, okay, we're talking about the stick figure where you've got the conscious mind, the subconscious mind separate, but then we've got all our senses like our touch, smell, sight, hearing, and they're all antennas, they're all receptors that receive all this information in so that our conscious mind can process it, simplify it, and send it to the subconscious mind. And the more of those receptors we can use to bring information in, the easier it is, and the more it's a multitude, it's multitasking repetitiveness. Because when you write something down, you're writing it down, you're seeing it written down, and if you're reading it also. So those are three of the receptors being utilized so that the information is more impactful. You know, and one of the things Bob talks about in this video is, you know, he said he didn't understand what he was doing. He didn't understand why anybody else could do it, but he was reading Think and Grow Rich, and he was also listening to the audio recording, the record, you know. And so I decided to look up research on that. And there is a study that's published in the Journal of Neuroscience. The Galat Lab at UC Berkeley would scan the brain when people were reading a book, and then when the same book was read to them, there was no difference in the activity in the brain. So the brain, whether it's read to you or you read it, as long as it's read in the same format, it's the same. Your brain can't tell the difference.
When you said that, it made me think back to when we're talking about changing our paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got something we want to change. We've got a positive affirmation. And when you first write it, we suggest that you write it 100 times on day one and then record it.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you're writing it, you're seeing and touching and seeing it. But as you're saying, the listening, I did not know this till you told me that earlier today. That because I always prefer to reading. I listen, but I don't think there's the values there. But it's going straight in the subconscious.
Yes.
And another thought on our five senses coming in. Bob calls it a six-lane highway. All this information is coming in, and if we're not paying attention, it goes straight into the subconscious.
Right.
The conscious mind can make a decision whether to accept or reject that information or whatever's coming in through the five senses. But you're not paying attention to it. It'll go into the subconscious, and particularly the things that you'd rather not have there.
Right. But if you're recording your affirmations, which I've done, by the way, I've got to record like 6 or 7 times, and then listen to them. The only thing you're doing is putting that positive repetitively back into your mind, which is what we tell people to do.
Do you read a couple affirmations that your daily affirmations?
Yeah, give me a second. Let's see. I am grateful my voice acting career nets over $1 million per year. My talents are used in children's cartoons. I love that one. Movies, audiobooks, I like that one too. Commercials and corporate training programs. I am grateful. I weigh 275, have a 40-inch waist, 72-inch chest, 10% body fat, walk 1 mile per day, which I'm hitting, by the way. Do a full body workout 3 days per week. And eat all natural, healthy foods, keeping my mind and body at a healthy peak performance.
Very good, John. I like that. I had some notes here that I was doing some single thoughts related to the teaching here. And the first one I wrote down here is, I'm so happy and grateful now that I've changed my paradigm. I've changed my programming. I've changed my comfort zone. I'm so happy and grateful.
I just wanted to make one point about the affirmations. I know mine are very specific, but that is one of the things you need to do. That affirmation needs to be specific so we can get that picture in our mind and see it and feeling.
This is, I could say, personal or an activity. I'm so happy and grateful now that all of my daily activities are on my Google Calendar. I'm so happy and grateful now that I follow my daily plan.
There you go.
That begs the question, did you write a daily plan? And that's either before I go to bed or first thing in the morning. I have to confess, generally it's first thing in the morning of writing out, these are the activities I need to do today. And then I prioritize them. This is another story, goes back a number of years. And there was an efficiency expert visiting a company and talking to the president. And he was complaining about I can't get his work done. He said, well, get a piece of paper out. He said, I want you to write down the things you want to do today, have to do today. And then I want you to prioritize them, put them in order, and start at the most important one. You may not finish your list, but you have done everything that was the most important things to do. So you had a great day. And the executive said, well, how much do I owe you? He says, do this for a month and then you can pay me whatever you feel, whatever you like. This is back in the 1920s. He said he's received a check for $25,000.
Wow.
So, which, imagine the number today, but it had that kind of an impact on his productivity. And then this day and age, we have so many things going on.
That's another thing. You need to slow down. That's why you only do one or two.
That's very, very good idea. Going back to changing our paradigm and our habits. If you change one or two every month, or as John says, maybe it takes 2 months. If you're doing 2 every 2 months, that's 1 a month. That's 12 habits. And you've been picking out habits that have a significant impact on your life and what you're doing. And Bob likes to say after 12 months, you'll need a telescope to look back to see how you were today. And I'd love to work with you. And I think we're going to put up my a link there to reach sidmastery.thinkingandresults.com. Doing some work on the website, but you have the tabs at the top that you can learn more about Bob and his partner Sandy Gallagher, their background, the benefits, the creation of Thinking and Results and the benefits, and be able to reach out to me, contact me if you'd like to have a conversation and see what is it that you really want to do. Bob's, I'm going to say his favorite expression is, if you can tell me what you want, I can show you how to get it.
Yep.
And I like to say, then the second shoe hits the floor, if you do exactly as I say. And John and I were talking about this yesterday, that generally most trainings, they're going to tell you what to do. They're going to teach you what to do. We show you what to do. We have our exercises every lesson. I want to call them homework, but they're really, what are you getting from these classes? We have 12 lessons, 12 videos, and all the homework is based on what did you get from it, and what's going on in your life in the areas that you're learning. And all I can say is, Thinking and Results changed my life. I was retired, playing a little golf and enjoying life in Vegas. Well, I still enjoy life, but I'm now being productive and I'm making a difference in people's lives. And I think that's why we're here on earth, is to make a difference in other people's lives. So we're almost closing it. I thank you for being with us. I look forward to next week. We're going to talk about the stick figure, the magic genie that explains how your conscious and subconscious mind work together. Thank you so much, John. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Absolutely.
And
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.